my final video on the I Made an App series. This has just been walking through start to finish kind of how I came about a fairly simplistic card counting app that you can get in the iStore. Figured it'd be worth or of interest to folks looking to build their own apps. So this is a blackjack card counter. You can find the link right below on the title page here, as well as in the information below the video. So just kind of the storyline as to why this is a thing. As part of my job, I visit social events and I have to kind of schmooze clientele. And just before COVID started, my boss actually sent me to a poker night fundraising event for a school district in Texas. Um, Seemed like a fun idea. I'm not a big gambler myself, but I've always been intrigued by blackjack because it seemed like the only event that wasn't pure chance. It seemed like you could actually have some thought in the game, and due to that thought, actually, play more successfully. So I sat down at the table. I started playing, and there was a handful of folks, some good old boys, as part of the district, sat down who clearly were proud of their prowess, and I had, of course, no clue what I was doing. But I sat down, and fairly soon I realized that as I was playing, you could see certain cards that were out. They were all coming from a single deck. So I was not in Vegas gambling here. And there's a probability of what is left in the deck and what might be drawn if I decide to hit. So I was just trying to do in my head how quick I could calculate how many cards I needed or that were available between the value I had and the score of 21. So if I had a score of 15, there were, ace would get me to 16, 2 would get me to 17, 3 to 18, 4 to 19, 5 to 20, and a 6 to 21. So there's 6 cards, and there were 4 suits. So that's 24 cards. So 24 out of the total deck, which is 54 in the deck. 52 in the deck. And you do a quick calculation. Is that greater than or less than 50%? Well, 24 divided by 52 is less than 50%. So I would stay. I wouldn't hit there. As you go, though, you start playing that game, and you just bet the same amount of dollars per round, slowly but surely. And as the night progressed, I found out that I had way more chips than anyone else at that table. I started thinking, there might be something to this. A couple weeks later, COVID hit. So went from traveling to all these events and everything, and all of a sudden I'm stuck at home. I needed something to do, and I realized that maybe I could pursue this kind of thought I had following that poker match, or excuse me, that blackjack game, and I might be able to actually test my math here. So went into Jupyter Labs, which is, Jupyter Notebook, kind of the same thing, and wrote a little quick Python code. I was able to round up some blackjack game that I could utilize, so I didn't have to start from scratch there. That's referenced in video 1. And then I was able to actually get my own algorithm sorted in my head well enough so I could turn it into a little function and I could embed it in this code. It did take a little bit of time just to troubleshoot and make sure that was happening, or it was successfully working, but it wasn't overly complex. You're just trying to calculate, is my chance, is my probability greater than or less than 50%. Pretty straightforward. So then once I got it running, I played several games just to make sure everything was working, and then I actually had to go in and see if the algorithm itself was accurate. So once I had it functioning and smoothly working, I had to throw it into a loop. And again, this is going to be referenced in video 2, but I embedded the entire game into just a while loop, and I did an initial run of 10. And the reason I did 10 was just to make sure the loop itself was running. If you run a loop of 10, it moves quickly, it's done quickly, but it's not necessarily the best output that you could guarantee. So there's still a good bit of chance thrown into a loop of 10. So then I upped it to 100 just to see what that would look like, and all of a sudden as I went through, I started to realize some small bits and pieces that I had to change in the code. But eventually I got up to 1,000 loops and finally 10,000. Running 10,000, I am not on a overly high-powered computer. I did not use any sort of GPU cards or anything in the calculation, and it took a while. I want to say it was well over an hour to run those 10,000 loops. So I don't recommend doing that every time, but definitely want to do it at least once or twice. Uh, Once I ran it a couple times at about 10,000 loops. I had somewhere between about 1.5, pushing up to 3%. So 1.5, maybe 2.5% advantage over chance. Chance just being 50% wins, 50% losses. So it seems okay. It seems a little underwhelming. Nothing. I'm not winning 80, 90% of the time, but I'm winning a bit. So it is enough. I did realize that professional card counters usually have an advantage of about 1 to 2%. Admittedly, that's usually using multiple decks and things like that, so they are doing a bit more than this algorithm is. However, on a one deck, one dealer, one player game, it seems to be functioning pretty well. And right after I ran that I got that loop functioning and everything was going great, things happened. Family took the reign. You had to do more family functions. I had to participate more in school functions. I had work sent me traveling a bunch more, and things kept getting pushed off. And to make matters even worse, in the middle of that year, my home got broken into, and the computer that I had all my code on was stolen. Luckily, I had actually emailed myself the code. I had actually embedded it online, and so I still had access to the code, which is great. I had forgotten whether I had done that, and so panic set in since I had written all this code and I had assumed I would be doing a video like this in the future. I was heartbroken that I was going to have to start from scratch, but luckily I was able to round up that code. Once I got that code going and I finally had the time, I went ahead and logged into Upwork. If you haven't gone to Upwork, it's just upwork.com. It's a kind of a social network of computer science individuals, developers, things like that. People that typically are from other countries, not necessarily the U.S., but you'll see most countries represented on the website. You can post a job, and the job you'll have a set project kind of to-do list. You'll have a dollar amount that you're proposing, and people can offer their services in exchange for that dollar amount. You get their background, you get their success rate, and the dollars that you put in are put into an escrow account, so they don't get paid until the user is content, and all of the legality once the business is concluded, all of the code and everything belongs to the user who purchased it. So there's a very nice, well-developed atmosphere on that, and my experience that I had was wonderful. I was looking for somebody who had more experience with user interface development, as well as somebody who knew something about the Apple iStore, what it would take for an app to be proposed, what checkboxes you had to cover, what security things, what type of code you'd have to write in. I knew none of that, so I was looking for somebody who knew a bit more than me. I did find out once I posted my job, I had a bunch of people interested. Everybody was emailing me wanting to do it. I'm pretty certain that I overpaid, so it might be worth doing research. I had the luxury of a bit of disposable income during that year, and so I was willing to put in a little extra cash just to get it done. But I would definitely recommend researching similar jobs, see what they went for. That way you don't overpay like I did. When the developers were all emailing me about their interest in the project, you get to look up their backgrounds and everything, and a lot of times they'll kind of send you a cover letter of sorts saying, I have history in this interest, and we developed apps like this and all that. And I had a lot of people emailing me who had already developed a blackjack card counting app, which is great because they could probably they already had it developed. It would have been done within the week. But the downside to that is that I had written the algorithm for this, and the algorithm that I wrote is different than your standard card counting algorithm. I think it's much more simple. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's much more intuitive, much simpler, and whether or not it works better or worse, I'm not sure, but I wanted to do my algorithm. I didn't want them overwriting the algorithm that I put in. So I kind of ruled anybody who had that experience out. And I wound up settling on two groups. One was an actual group. It was an actual, I think, company. And I want to say they were based out of India. They had a manager, they had kind of a sub-manager, and they had a team beneath them that were just consistently turning out apps. And you could see how many apps they'd worked on in the last few years on their profile, their success rate, and all that. And they were a tremendous team. And the second one was an individual who'd worked on far less apps, but similar success rate. And it was just a single gentleman. So I had interviews with both, just kind of a Zoom call on both. And I had an interview with the full team first. It was two individuals on the team. One was kind of more in the administrative role. One was more on the technical role. And they were very polite, very helpful, very to the point. It wasn't the friendliest interview I've ever had, but I have no doubt that they would have done a great job. The second interview I had, and I was actually set on going with group number one, but I had to do the second interview. And so I had the second interview with the single individual. His name is Shar, and I have his Upwork link as well in the information below. So I had that interview, and that interview was just so much more smooth. It was a casual conversation. He was enjoyable to be with. It was a really nice talk, and he was very interested in the project. And it seemed like it was interest of his own curiosity. He had never played blackjack before. It seemed intriguing to him. The project seemed fun, and he was also looking for extra money on the side. So I ended up going with my second option, the single individual, simply because we just got along better, and I knew this was a personal project. It wasn't a anything I was really expecting to make much money on. So I went with the individual that I got along better with, the one that I could see myself in the long term having a good professional relationship. It turns out that Ashara is based out of Sri Lanka, and I know very little about Sri Lanka other than just what Google Images has offered me. But almost immediately into the project, we had a great start. Everything was looking great, and then all of a sudden, Sri Lanka had a revolution. So in the middle of this project, which was assumed to be maybe a month or two of work, it gets put on hold. Shar and I talk, and I'm very adamant that he take care of his family and his life during this kind of government shutdown for the entire country. At one point, he mentioned he had waited 10 hours in line for a liter of gas, if I'm not mistaken. So definitely, life happened during this project, and it kept getting pushed back and being pushed back. Even during this, though, Shar would touch base with me regularly. He'd let me know how he was what he was working on. He'd send me new updates. He'd ask me questions of what I preferred, one way or the other. And about once or twice a month, we'd have a Zoom call, usually late at night due to the time change. It'd be early morning his time, late at night my time. But he was working on weekends. He was taking all his time on this. And slowly but surely, we refined the code. We got the graphics looking good. We got the icons looking good. And the functionality started to smooth out. We found bumps here and there, predominantly with the ace function in the blackjack code, which is tricky because aces will be either worth 11 in some particular scenarios or 1 in others, and you have to kind of adapt it accordingly. So finally, we get everything put through, and the very last day of 2022, the app becomes available. The link to the app, I have it on the first tab, and it's also going to be in that the information below. Feel free to check it out. It's 99 cents. It's not going to break the bank at any point. It is as I said, it's a simplistic app. Nothing overly complex. Nothing overly ridiculous about the app. When you open it up, you have a very nice little home page. You'll have a disclaimer. We're not here to make you money. We're not here to, if you happen to lose any money, that's not on us. It's not promoting gambling. It's just a novelty here. But what you get is a dealer card on the top side of the app, a player card on the bottom. You hit the plus icon to add in the cards manually. And basically, it's as you'd be playing blackjack with friends, you could add in what cards appear on the table. As this goes, that start icon in the middle of the app turns into a probability as well as a choice as to whether you should hit or stay. And the probability is basically saying what is the probability of you getting one of the cards that you need to get a value greater than what you have, but not over the value of 21. So it's basically saying, should you hit, if there's a better probability of getting to 21, or should you stay if you will likely bust or go over 21. It's great. It works well. To reset it, you just shake your phone, which was a very nice little add-on that Ashara came up with. And then as we go with this, we have hopes of actually continuing to work on this, mostly just for our own interest. Right now, it only works on a simple one player, one dealer, one deck algorithm. We do want to actually add in multiple decks, multiple players, things like that. But we also want to add in a few layers of machine learning just to see what we can do with it. And then additionally, the algorithm right now is just showing you what's the probability of you not busting, right? And we would like to add some more complexity to that. Should you add in more money? Should you split your hand? Things like that. Additionally, what we'd like to add in is, what is the dollar amount you should be betting? If you have $100, again, we're going to say this is Monopoly money. If you have 100 Monopoly dollars, should you put in $50? Should you put in $5? Should you put in $10? What's the ideal value so that you won't run out of money if this probability goes out of favor for an extended period? So we aim to kind of add those in, mostly for our own curiosity. And again, just keep in mind, this is not meant to promote any sort of gambling, and any money incurred or lost is not part of this app. We don't have any guarantee on these improvements. It's it's something that's in our pipeline, and we don't have a timeline for it either. So there's no promises here, but it is our goal in the future to add these in. Anyway, I do hope you check out the app. It's been about 2 years in the works. As simple as it seems, it's been about 2 years in the works. And if you have any feedback as well, please shoot me a message, leave a comment. And if you haven't, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get more folks interested in this data science, more folks interested in kind of the very basics of coding, so that you don't just have to memorize things, but you can actually come in and understand what's going on with it. Anyway, I hope this was enjoyable. I hope you get to try out the app. And if you got any questions, shoot a comment down below.